stream.
Yep, a message came up.
Setting up. Stream. Oh, there we
Yep.
are. Okay.
A message came up.
All right. So now I'm going to, I just muted my view of the live stream so it won't get in the way of our thing. Okay.
Okay, now can you make me co-host?
Now, oops. Yeah, that's annoying.
Yeah. I still don't understand why you can't access the same meeting list.
Yeah, I
Still,
know.
you
Van,
still,
can I make you a co-host also?
okay, I'm going to admit the people momentarily.
Yes.
There they go. Okay, time to admit. Ready?
And the thing is, I'm going to make co-hosts of both our speakers so they can easily share without having to turn on everybody's share. Welcome, everybody. And Paul Chernoff, welcome.
Yeah.
And we'll want to get you started pretty soon. But what we'll do is make you a co-host, and that way you'll be able to share any content that you need to do.
Yes, that'd be great.
We'll wait just a couple of minutes and then get you started. And Paul, thanks so much again for doing this. Folks, our time is compressed because Paul has to leave at the dot of 10:30. But I wanted to be sure that all of you know that Paul has not only been a long-time Pi member, but is the tech guy at the Washingtonian Magazine. Several years ago, they did a wonderful thing, which is to give the employees an ability to place an ad in their magazine. And Paul immediately decided that he would donate this to the Pi. And so we've had this wonderful sort of fairyland of the Pi having an ad in the Washingtonian, courtesy of Paul. And over the years, we've changed it. And Paul, I haven't checked the newest Washingtonian for it, but I assume it's there.
Probably. I'd have to run downstairs to check.
Lest you, lest anyone ask, we still don't know if actually this has brought us any members, but it did bring us a wonderful woman who had a bunch of work Macs to donate to the Mac Recycle Clinic. So that was actually a happy thing that came out of the Washingtonian ad. But Paul, I just wanted to thank you again for thinking of the club when this came up that has given us something that we otherwise just wouldn't have. And I see Sam is in the house now. And Sam, also welcome to you. And thanks so much for coming back to the Pi after, serving in the leadership of the Pi back in the pre-internet days. And for being such a help in our meetings and a font of wisdom. And Sam, thank you for agreeing to do this session today.
Well,
folks.
good morning and thank you. I don't know that I've ever been called a font of wisdom, so I'll do my best.
Folks, we're at the January 2026 general meeting, and we're going to be letting people in, but we're also going to start the presentation because we're constrained with Paul having to leave early. And so, Paul, are you ready to begin?
Yes, I am all ready. Also, I just want to add in Sam. Basically, I will go to 10:30 and then Sam will take over when I'm done.
And
okay.
Folks, we are also live on YouTube to live stream this meeting. So, okay. Paul Chernoff, take it away.
Okay. Welcome, everyone. Let me go. I'm going to share everything and get to my. Okay. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
You're good.
Great. Okay. So let me get the slideshow started. So basically, we're going to be discussing backing up your Mac. We will touch on iOS a little bit. So both Sam and I, we were asked a week ago to do the presentation, and we went ahead and got started with it. Okay. All right. Okay. Stop showing Zoom stuff. Okay. So as introduction, often many of us ignore backups. We should be backing up because backups protect us. Backups also need to be automatic. If you need to manually do a backup, backups will not get done, or at least not get done frequently enough. And you also need to test your backups. Backing up is easy, restoring is harder, or sometimes impossible. So you want to make sure that you can restore from your backups. Okay. Okay. Why backup? Okay. The reason why you back up is because your files are important to you. They may not be legally or financially important stuff in them, but there's stuff that probably is of importance, especially in terms of photographs. I have seen people in Apple stores discussing backups and people saying, oh, I don't have anything of value on my phone or on my Mac. But they don't take into account that this is the only copy of the photographs they have of their family. And as I mentioned before, backups need to be automatic so that they get done all the time. And what to back up? Back up your data, all of your data. Don't get picky about it. Just make sure you're backing up everything, because you may, if you try and say, oh, I'm just going to back up this and not the other stuff, you may find that you forgot to back up something that you needed, or that thing that you didn't back up, you really did need after all. Generally, I do not back up applications unless if an application is irreplaceable, such as it's from a publisher who's gone out of business. The reason why is that if I backed up all my applications, that would take up a lot of backup time, a lot of space on my backup media that I would rather be using. I might run out of backup space. And the thing is, most of my applications I can always get back if I set up a new machine without doing much work. But I do have applications which are no longer where the publisher has gone out of business. So I have to make sure that I have those applications backed up so I could restore them to a new machine if necessary. Okay. Big question. What is a backup? A backup is copying your data to a different media. It could be to a hard disk. It could be to the cloud. It could be to tape. Do not, as consumers, very few of us copy to tape. Copying your data to another partition of your hard disk is not a backup. A backup should retain deleted files and multiple versions of files. So, for example, you're working, you say, I need to go back to that document. I've worked on it since yesterday, but I need the version from yesterday. You need to be able to do that. Also, if you've deleted a file, you want to be able to restore it, going back in time. And you have to think, what are you protecting yourself from? You're protecting yourself if your computer is stolen, if the building it is has burned down, against file corruption, and mischievous children. Also, you want to protect yourself against yourself. Like I say, accidentally deleting the contents of file or throwing something away. I've known many people said, can you find that email that I sent you? No, turns out that they had it in the trash. And then, if they waited too long, they wouldn't have been able to get it back. Backups are not archives. And so I'm not going to really touch upon archiving, but archiving is when you're putting stuff away to keep it forever. Backups, you're keeping something for a certain amount of time. And so therefore, at times you just won't be doing archiving instead of backup. Okay, what isn't a backup? Generally, iCloud is not a backup. And by this, I mean iCloud syncing and iCloud photos. Because what happens, for example, people say, oh, I put the photo in iCloud Photos, I don't need to back it up. But actually, you delete the photo from your Mac, and then it gets deleted from iCloud Photos. It gets deleted from your iPhone. It gets deleted from your iPad. So basically, syncing services are not backup. Some people think that having RAID, whether it's 2, 5, 6, 10, or 20, is backup. But it isn't. It doesn't protect you if the whole machine dies. It just protects you from individual drives dying. It doesn't protect, RAID doesn't allow you to go back and restore a file from, let's say, 2 days ago. Google Drive is not backup because, again, you can delete it from there, and after 20 days, the file is gone. So it does provide some limited backup, but it's not a backup system. Same with Dropbox. Dropbox, I think, tries to make you think it could be a backup system, but no, because again, you delete it from one machine, a file from one machine, it gets deleted from all the others. Copying files to another location on your physical hard disk is not backup. And iCloud Photo Library, which I already mentioned, that's not backup of your photos. Okay, so using that as a segue, there is a way, first of all, I just want to mention, there is a great way to back up your iCloud files and photos. And there's an app for the Mac and also for iOS called Parachute Backup, which is $5 for each platform. It's a one-time fee. It's not monthly. I have a diagram of it, and it communicates directly with iCloud. So you don't have to have the files on your computer. And what you can do, you use it to copy your files from iCloud to a hard disk or to a different cloud-based storage system. It's very simple to use. You can set up scheduled backups. And what happens is I don't have a schedule because I alternate. I copy my iCloud Drive backup and my iCloud Photos backup to 2 different hard disks, which I then rotate, and I take one of my drives off-site at all times. But you can, if you have enough drives connected to your computer, you can set this up to do automated backups. So as you see here, the iCloud Drive backup and the iCloud Photos backup are 2 separate operations. The first time you run it, it will take a long time, but after that, you can do incremental backups to it. It's not a terribly sophisticated program, but it does the job. It also copies the files to wherever you copy to. It's making Finder-friendly files. So if you want to recover something, you just open up the hard disk and you go looking for the files, and you just drag them to where you want them. And I recommend, if you're using this, to back up to at least 2 different drives, because backup drives can go bad. Okay, and now different types of backups. So we have cloud-based backups. The advantage of them, they usually set up to be automatic. Disadvantages are you have to have enough bandwidth, and the restore times can be terrible. I do have an icon of Backblaze. I do use Backblaze for my Mac. It backs itself. When I had external hard disks, it also backed up the external hard disk for me. I did have an external hard disk complete failure, and that's why I discovered, no, I don't want to recover files through the web. That would take forever, and it's not designed for that. But I said, I contacted Backblaze. They sent me a hard disk with all my files on it. I gave them a deposit. I then copied everything from Backblaze, from the drive they gave me to the new drive I purchased. And then I shipped the drive that they sent me back to them. And it all worked great. It was very easy. I also had the option of buying the drive from them if I didn't want to buy my own drive. But it was, for me, it was much cheaper to buy my own drive. and just pay them to ship me a drive and then to ship a drive back to them. But really, in terms of drive restoration, you really only use it to, on the web, you will only restore a few files at a time. If you have a total disk failure, you're going to get them to send you a drive. Okay. Then we have Time Machine. The advantage of Time Machine is that as long as you have a backup drive connected to the Mac, it's automatic and you don't have to think about it. Since most of us use laptops these days, you do have to think about it because you do have to connect the drive to the Mac to get Time Machine working. So that's its disadvantage. And now, okay. It's not letting me. Oh, okay, great. Let me get back here. Sorry, give me a moment. So one thing for Time Machine to keep, as you can see here, I have more than one Time Machine drives. Because again, if you just have your drive at home and your home burns down, your Time Machine drive will not help you. So I have two drives. I have backup A and backup SSD-A, in which, by the way, I'm violating one of my rules by using an SSD drive for that. I had a backup drive called backup B, but that drive went bad. And it gives me, I got a warning here, and it said, never finished the first backup. What's important here, again, in Time Machine, I go to Options, and you can exclude stuff from getting backed up. So I said, do not back up the Applications folder, because I don't need the Applications folder backed up. All the applications I can get elsewhere, and I've manually backed up applications which might be unique and which I can't replace. And all I have to do, if I want to exclude, is hit the plus button, find a folder. I might well say, okay, I don't want to back up that user's folder, exclude it. And now that will be excluded from the backup. Sometimes you also have to do this because your internal drive is bigger than your backup drives. That's it. And then Time Machine is very simple. Here it's showing me where I've been recently. This is the last folder I was in with Time Machine. I can go anywhere, go to my desktop, and then I can go back here and navigate. Okay, I'm looking for a file from June. And then it will take me backwards in time. And then all I have to do is select the file that I want. And okay, here we go. We go back in time. I find a file. I click on the file, and then I can restore the file. So that's right. Time Machine is probably the easiest to use backup solution. Okay. Then there are other local backups, such as Carbon Copy Cloner or SuperDuper. These are basically programs which do syncing between one drive to another, and they basically provide a very nice interface to the rsync Unix command. And I use it just very basically. I just select a source, a destination, in which case I tell it, and this is a case where I do copy everything over. You can set this up to do timed backups. So let's say this is set up to back up my drive once a day at 2 o'clock in the morning. Also, all my backup drives are encrypted. Sometimes some people do all this work to protect their computer, protect the privacy of their files, and they back up to unencrypted drives. So someone just has to get into your backup and they can get all your stuff. And one neat thing about Carbon Copy Cloner is that you can store your drive's password, encryption password, in your keychain, and then carbon copy cloner, when it does the backup, it will automatically mount the drive, put in the password, do the backup operation, and then unmount the drive when it's done. So this provides a bit better security for you, that your backup drive is offline most of the time. So if something happens to your computer, and if you catch it before it mounts the drive, your backup drive is good. And again, I recommend rotating carbon copy drives. And there's a lot of features in here which I don't use. Super Duper and Carbon Copy Cloner used to be used a lot because you can make boot up drives for them. So in other words, your drive dies on your Mac, you take your external drive and you boot up off the external clone drive. You can't do that anymore with modern Mac OS and with the modern Macs. So all you're really doing is you're backing up, and you're not you're backing up your drives, but you're not making a bootable drive. You're making a drive that you're going to be able to restore from. Okay, let me get back here. And there's a theory, Sam may go into this in greater detail than me, but the 3-2-1 rule for doing backups. You want to have at least 3 backups. As I said, backups get bad. You may have backups offsite, so they may not all be up to date. You want them stored on 2 different, that should be 2 different types of storage or 2 different types of media. For example, I'm backing up to hard disk and I'm backing up to the cloud. What happens sometimes is media can go bad, drives can go bad, media types of media can go bad. You may find out that you're backing up to a type of media that you're not going to be able to restore from. Anyone here remember SideQuest drives? Yeah, I used to back up to SideQuest drives. Once I really could not connect the SideQuest drive to my Mac anymore, I had to replace and get a different media for doing backup. You always want to have at least 1 copy of your backup stored offsite. So that's the 1 and 3-2-1. That could be a cloud. That's why I do cloud backup. And that's why I also take backups for my house and I put them in and I take them to my office. Some people get real fancy with this and they'll set up a system where they're syncing between the machine at their house and their parents' house, for example, a relative's house, for example, and that happens automatically. But you always want to protect yourself. A lot of people, when they do backups, they just back up to 1 hard disk that's with them. And someone comes in and steals the backup and the drive. Some people, if you have stuff that's really important, you may even want to consider storing backups in safe deposit boxes. And remember, backups are not forever. So for example, if media is no longer supported, I used to do backups on floppy disks. So you have to consider at some time you're going to change your media because there's a new media type that's out. You might, if your backups are real important, you may restore your backup to a drive so you can then back them up to a new media. Also keep in mind that media, over time you get bit rot with drives, with both spinning Rust drives and with SSDs. In terms of security, you want to encrypt your drives and encrypt your data. So you don't want your backups to be a backdoor to someone getting your stuff. Okay, I wanted to touch on backing up your iPhone and iPad, even though we're really talking about backing up the Mac. You can back up your iPhone and iPad to a Mac or to a Windows computer. What I recommend is setting it up to automatically back up your iPhone to iCloud. This is a case where iCloud is actually working as a backup solution. And the advantage of backing up to iCloud is that it's automatic and you don't have to plug in your iPhone into your Mac. And some people, and just warning, the 5 gigabytes that Apple gives you for iCloud for free is not sufficient. So go ahead, big spender, spend that extra $1 a month to get additional space in iCloud. So you actually have room for backing up your iPhone, or probably you have multiple devices. I am hoping someday that Apple will set up an official backup time machine to actually work with iCloud in addition to local storage. Okay. And again, you have to keep your backup systems up to date. As I've mentioned earlier, media has changed. And keep in mind, for example, Apple is now dropping support soon for time capsule. Some people had bought time capsules. It was a great idea, so you could back up through your network to a machine. So that really took care of the problem of people with laptops wanting to back up, because then you didn't have to connect your laptop to your backup media itself. So for example, if you're using time capsule, you now have to think about, what am I going to replace time capsule with? Also, while I was looking at this, I noticed that older versions of iOS got dropped and that you weren't able to back them up anymore to iCloud. So once you have your backup system set up, you have to occasionally check it and make sure that's still working for you. You might be using software that was abandoned by their publisher, or the company was acquired by a company that did a really bad job of maintaining their software. In my office, I used to use Dance Retrospect. They got bought over by another company that basically ruined the product. And then we had to go shopping for another product for the office. Keep in mind, you may be running an ancient OS that does not run on modern hardware. So therefore, what are you going to do with the backups of those computers? At my work, I use one program at work. That's a 32-bit app that I haven't found a replacement for. So I have a stack of Mac Minis running Mac OS 10.13 or 10.15 just for running that. So that's the case where it's a very small amount of stuff that I have to back up. So I have everything on the server, so I can just put it onto another Mac Mini. And I don't allow any of those Mac Minis to leave my office for that reason. So that could be a problem for some people who hold on to hardware for a long time. Backup can become more challenging because you have to think not only backing it up, but how could you restore that data to a brand new machine? And also, SSDs have proven to be poor media for backups unless if you can refresh the drives on a regular basis. Not going to go into technicalities, but basically SSD's performance slow down over time due to bit rot. But if you can manage to rewrite to every single sector, let's say once a year, that can greatly improve performance.
Paul, may I interrupt, please? Yeah.
Oh, please, sure.
Time is running out for you, and
yes.
I wanted to see if Pi members had any quick questions.
Yes.
Raju, did you bring up something in the chat that you wanted Paul to?
Okay.
Yeah, just could you repeat what you suggested for storing the password, encrypted password? You mentioned something.
Oh, okay. So I was saying, well, first of all, have your password, encrypted password, stored somewhere, like in 1Password or in Apple Passwords. But what I was mentioning was that Carbon Copy Cloner has the ability to save the encrypted password into your keychain for you, and it will automatically mount your encrypted drive.
Okay, so that's for the other software.
So that's for that particular program. Sam will discuss Super Duper.
Got it.
My experience with Time Machine is I need to keep the drive mounted all the time.
Understood. Thank you.
Sure. Oops, all right, meant to stop the share. Okay.
Paul, thank you so much. And I wanted to be sure that you knew that in appreciation for your present today, we'll be sending you a handsome Pi mug.
Oh, terrific. I knew that.
And we ask our presenters when they get their Pi mug to do a mug selfie that we post in our photo area of the groups.io. So, I think we have your address in the membership database, and we'll be sending you a pie mug.
Yes, hasn't changed for a long time. Oh, I just want to answer. I'm just looking back. Roger, you have a really good backup situation. Yeah, I use like Carbon Copy Cloner and Time Machine, and that's good. And it's great that you're doing your rotation. That looks good enough, depending upon your needs and what you're doing. Is that if you're using iCloud, I would recommend adding in Parachute. To that. Okay, Sam has answered other stuff. By the way, for the difficulties of creating bootable drives, the makers of Carbon Copy Cloner had done a blog post last year, I think, or 2 years ago, about all the challenges of doing that. Okay, I got 1 more minute. Any more questions? Okay, well, everyone stay safe. Make sure you don't have heart attacks tomorrow doing any shoveling.
Paul, thank
Okay.
you so much again.
Very welcome.
And please now go do what you must
Yes.
do, okay?
Okay, right, bye.
Thank you, Paul.
Oh, that was wonderful. Folks, why don't we move to part 2? Sam, are you ready to continue?
I am. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
All right. Oops, I am getting an error. Sharing is not turned on. So
Oh, hold on.
I'll send you the request. Yep.
I haven't made you a, hold on. Let me make you a co-host. Yeah, that's the way we do it. Rather than turn it on, yeah. So it should work now.
Okay. See if I can. Let's see. Allow.
So welcome, Sam Knutson. And while Sam is getting ready, everyone, I posted in the chat the link to our Pi Attend sheet. So please sign into our Pi Attend to be eligible for the door prize that we'll draw later in the meeting.
Okay. And okay. And everyone should be looking at a title slide that says backing up your Mac. Looks like it's sharing to me. Okay.
Good.
Outstanding. I really enjoyed, it was nice that we were able to kind of pull this together fairly quickly. And Paul and I really enjoyed collaborating. We had a couple of calls and found, not surprisingly, a lot of commonality in our thinking. And so you're gonna see that it's gonna be a little hard in places to tell Paul and I apart in terms of, what we're saying. There's going to be a lot of overlap in some of the things we're recommending. This is going to be my how do I do it view. So they're going to be very similar, but there will be some differences in tooling and, just in choices. And one of the things that you'll hear a couple of times today, and I think you got this from Paul, you also get it from me, is there is no one true way that you must do backup. There is a plethora of tools available and techniques. So I'm not going to be super prescriptive, with some exceptions of, like, you get down to sort of bedrock principles. You can use any tool that provides functionality, but you absolutely should do it. And there are some things that I'll say there's the easy way, and then there's go find yourself another way. So Paul talked about the need to have 3-2-1 backup. And this is one of those things that it sounds sort of very technical and like a methodology you might read in the textbook. We're just talking about having 3 total copies of your data. The original copy in your Mac plus 2 backups on 2 different storage media. like an internal drive, an external drive, or cloud, which is going to be the option many, many people are going to use today, with one copy kept off-site. And that's going to be important when you think about things that where the problem is beyond your laptop or your computer and is actually like your whole house is, there was some sort of horrible calamity and it's just not there anymore. Now, Paul also strongly encouraged you to encrypt your backups, and I'm going to agree with that, with some caveats. Again, that there is no one rule that you absolutely must follow. Everything is risk management and choices, and you'll see where the guideline is encrypt all your backups, encrypt all your data, and I absolutely say that's the guideline, and then I politely steer right around it. Paul encouraged you to test your backups, and I absolutely agree. If you've not had well-tested tools, then you're going to be very unfamiliar, fearful when it comes to using them. And some of these things can be just very helpful. There's backups that are for sort of the big problems, and there's backups that are for smaller problems. Like, I screwed up the copy of a presentation I was working on. I saved it, and there is no other copy, and I really need to get back to the one that I had yesterday afternoon. Well, some of these same processes that we're doing are absolutely perfect for that. They're not all just for the big problem. Some of them are just things that make little mistakes a little easier to recover from. Paul showed you Carbon Copy Cloner, so I'm going to show you Super Duper. And functionally, they do pretty much the same thing. But I really enjoy some of the writing and speaking from a gentleman named Simon Sinek, and he always says, start with the why. And Paul listed some of the sort of the common reasons of why backup, fire, flood, theft, malware, ransomware, virus, hardware failures, software failures, the bane of my corporate IT existence, firmware bugs, which is that little bit of software that no one likes to admit that it's software that lives in ROM or special memory someplace in your hard drive and your computer that gets it up from ground zero and does some of that fundamental level stuff. And the Dennis the Menace factor, the happy 5-year-old that comes running through your office and unfortunately snags the hard disk cable and sends it flying across the room. Sometimes you look in the mirror and you are Dennis the Menace. All of those things can lead to losing data. In fact, the acronym in the corporate mainframe world that I worked in was the word data loss, with all caps, no spaces, and it was the most severe kind of problem. Outages were bad, and I worked on computers and as a customer and a vendor that had 5 nines of availability, which is ridiculous uptime. And these were IBM mainframes. There, when you make an airline reservation or swipe your Visa card, and it just always works, and it works mind-numbingly fast on the back end. That was the kind of expectations we had. And outages were concerning, but data loss was what kept me up at night, and we had entire teams of people that managed storage to make sure that that never happened, and that we had redundancy on many, many levels, and that we could always recover to the current time if bad things happened with disaster recovery. But this can be a very personal problem. And even if we're not talking about your business, my niece and nephew had a little mix-up on who was paying for the iCloud storage and had a phone that was not backing up for a couple of years. And they wound up then having an accident and losing a couple of years of family photos on that iPhone. And it could have been a Mac, could have been anything else. But the key is our lives are so digital now that losing a device and losing the data on it over some period of time can just, tear your heart out. It's like I think about photos that I have that are digital that I would dearly not want to lose. The last photo of my mother alive means a lot to me, and I'll pull that out and look at it. And as a segue from that, when it comes to photos, it's the shoebox method is still not a bad idea. If you think about all the photos you have from your grandparents, your great grandparents, and they were printed, put in a shoebox, and handed down. Print your photos, make photo books. We could do a wonderful meeting on that. We could do something in the photo sig, we do something here, but share your digital memories. And through sharing them and producing them as real world artifacts, you're going to further protect them. But digital memories are what most of us have, digital documents. And these things can be fragile. There's a good book that I read a while ago called The Digital Dark Ages, and it talked about the evolution. Paul mentioned SideQuest. I've used zip drives, if anyone remembers those, kind of hard shell things. Well, it's almost impossible to read a lot of that media now. So you're constantly having to recopy and back it up and, sort of freshen it. Well, if you don't do that, you can lose access. My father had my original Apple IIe that I gave him when I bought my Apple II GS. Unbeknownst to me, he started writing an autobiography. I only discovered it after his death in going through that machine, and I've been able to move that data so that I have it accessible to me on my current Mac. Now, those writings, what kind of price could you put on those? So that's why you need to back up. It's for the things that you do with these tools, whether it's creative work or just work or family memories. You really want to protect those things. So that's why we're doing it. It's the technology is just something that we have to deal with in order to protect those memories. Now, Paul and I hopefully are giving some useful advice this morning, but I'm going to recommend you consult with real experts, people who do this for a living. And I'll cite some more local experts as we go through the presentation. But the first one is Gary Rosenwig from MacMost. Now, you've probably seen some of Gary's videos. We talk about them periodically in different Pi gatherings. Gary is an amazing, just great plain language communicator. He makes using the Mac so simple. He shows everything from advanced tips and tricks that I have found always illuminating to basics that maybe you just hadn't dealt with, and cannot recommend pursuing his content enough. The other one, and I kind of reviewed this in preparing this presentation, was Joe Kissel's book, and Take Control of Backing Up Your Mac. And there was the whole series of Take Control books. We do have a 30% discount code, which I think Jonathan's going to put in the chat. And so to buy this book, it's a little less than $15, and you get a PDF and an EPUB, which means you can put it on almost any e-reader that you want, from Apple Books, Kindle, Kobo. And he's updated this over time. So this isn't like an old book. He's just updated it to version 5.2. It's completely up to date for Tahoe, and I expect that he will continue to update it for some time. So if you're looking for the 400-page backup encyclopedia, and you don't have to read it cover to cover, he gives you some advice at the beginning, like, hey, if you don't have anything, start here. And you can look at the table of contents and say, I'm trying to make a decision about whether a NAS is the right for me to do backups. You can go read just that material, but it's very thorough, very well written, and they do provide a discount for us here in the Pi, and I highly recommend it. So kind of mirroring what I do, and we'll talk actually about what I do at the end in detail. But if I was to sort of pull through his book, his 3-part strategies and options that are outlined pretty much are what I'm doing, what Roger's doing, what Paul's doing, and that's because these things do make sense. And the URL is right there for the book if you want to go buy it or learn some more about it. But the 3 parts are version backups. And this is that, solving big problems and little problems can be in the same tool set. A Time Machine would be a tool that makes version backups. So I can go get a file, from just yesterday that, maybe the good version of the presentation before I had a brain fart and ripped out a whole section that turns out I now need to add back in. And I don't want to recreate it. I can just go get the file from yesterday, bring it back, copy it out of there, or bring the whole file back. And that's a great capability that everyone should avail themselves through one or more tools. There are tools which copy a volume or subsets of a volume, and this would be the category that includes things like Carbon Copy Cloner, Super Duper, and we're gonna do a demo of Super Duper later. And this is where you get into now. I get that. How do I get to 321? How do I get another copy of my data? How do I get a copy that I can put offline, even off-site? And an offsite copy is that big parachute for when really bad things have happened. And that's the theft, fire, flood bucket of what do I do now? I have my phone and my family, and I'm grateful that I've got them, but man, I'd really like to get my data back. Well, it's important to have it offsite. And again, we'll go through that a little more detail, some of your options, but cloud backup or physically rotate disks or both. And you can layer these things, your backup strategy, it's going to be the onion that you like, whether, what layers do you want to add into it to get a really good solution that you're comfortable with? Now, Gary Rosenwig, we mentioned MacMost. On backup in particular, he has more than 18 videos. You can go to his website, macmost.com, and if you use the URL at the bottom of the screen here, you can go straight to the 18 backup videos, and covers everything from setting up Time Machine to choice of hard drives to backup to. He allows you to watch this on his website or on YouTube. And he does have a Patreon, which is where you can pledge, a little monthly support for him. And if you pledge at certain levels, you can get exclusive content for his Club Mac Most. And I highly recommend supporting him. Gary's been, like I say, a staple that's often mentioned in the pie. And so what I'm going to do is actually play you a short video from Gary on setting up Time Machine, because he is a professional, and I think he's going to do a much better job articulating this than I would. So hold on, we'll get that up here.
Sam, we have a great tradition of playing Gary's short videos at our meetings, so carry on.
Absolutely.
And while Sam's doing that, everybody sign in to the Pi Attend form to be eligible for the door prize later in the meeting.
Okay, so this is about a 5-minute video, and this is going to be on getting started with Time Machine, Gary from MacMost. So everybody can see this okay?
Yes, all good, Sam.
Good.
So if you're new to Mac, one of the most important things that you need to do, and if you haven't done it, you need to do it right now, is you need to start backing up. Backups are critical no matter what type of computer system you're using. You need to have a good backup. Just this last month, I've heard from people that have lost all their photos. I've heard from people that have lost a journal that goes back years. I've heard from people that have lost super long documents with all sorts of information in them, and all because they didn't have a good backup, or in some cases they were able to actually get the data back because they had a good backup. So you need to do this. Every computer, it's like wearing a seatbelt. You need to do it. And it's pretty easy to get going. Apple has a great page on it, and I'll have a link to this on the post here, where it tells you how to set it up and everything. And it couldn't be easier than on a Mac. You just follow the instructions on here and you get things set up. Now the first thing you're going to need is an external drive to back things up. Now there are two ways to do this. One is having a network drive, which is a little more complex. If you know how to do that and you have a MacBook, something that's not permanently sitting on a desk, then you're going to want to do that. But otherwise, the simplest way, whether you have a MacBook, an iMac, or whatever it is to get an external drive. And they're really cheap. And you look at them, there's some that are like down to close to 50 bucks, 60 bucks, you want to get one that is larger than the drive on your Mac. So with MacBooks, that's really no problem. A 1 or 2 terabyte drive, you can see here for pretty cheap prices, is easy to get. If you've got a larger drive on your Mac for some reason, you're going to want to get a larger one. Because Time Machine doesn't just back up everything you have now, but it keeps a record of things, a history. So if you accidentally deleted a file 6 months ago, you can still get it back. A cloned backup, a backup of everything you've got, isn't going to have things you just deleted because you deleted them. So they're not going to be backed up. But a history is really important, and Time Machine does that automatically without you doing anything extra. So you can see for under 100 bucks you can get all sorts of drives. I like the ones that don't require any external power. I definitely want to say that you get USB 3 drives because all the newer Macs use USB 3. It's much faster and it's kind of future-proofing it a little bit. USB 2 is much slower. So anyway, get a drive, buy one online, buy one at a local store, start backing up. Whatever the price is, it's way cheaper than if you were to lose something valuable like your photos or the novel you've been writing or some important work documents. Then getting going is pretty easy. So here, for instance, I've got a Mac that's never been hooked up to Time Machine before. So it's new, just like if you would buy a new one or you haven't done this yet. If you go to System Preferences and then you go to Time Machine, you're ready to get set up. And it just has there select backup disk. Now you want to hook up an external drive, something like this, a little external drive at this point, and it will prompt you to use it as a backup drive. Actually, usually if you get a new one of these and you plug it into your Mac for the first time, it's going to prompt you saying, do you want to use this as a backup drive? So you select the drive, in this case it's called external drive, and you hit use disk. It's going to completely erase the drive and it's going to then format it into the correct format for Time Machine. You don't have to worry about what it was formatted like before, if it said it was for Windows or anything like that. It's going to take care of everything. It's going to clean it off and set it up for Time Machine. You can also check this encrypt backups box here. This is if you're worried that this drive may get stolen. Maybe it's something that you have in a public place like in work or something like that. If you encrypt the backups, it's going to ask you for a password and you need to remember that password as you won't be able to get to anything on the backups. So depending upon your need for security, you might want to check that, or if this is just in your home and nobody has access to it but you, then you may not want to worry too much about it. And then as soon as you hit use disk, you're set. Everything else is going to be automatic. It's going to automatically back things up when the drive is connected. And if you have a desktop Mac like an iMac or a Mac Mini or Mac Pro, you just keep it connected all the time. If you have something you have to move around, then you want to make sure you connect it daily. So maybe at the end of the day when you sit the MacBook on your desk, just connect the backup drive to it because of course it can't back up unless it's connected. So you want to make sure that you do that. You want to let it just do its thing, create its backups. A lot of people complain that, hey, it's doing it every hour. That's too much. It's actually not, because in an hour of work you may only create 1 or 2 files or alter 1 or 2 files, so the backup happens quickly. But if you were to leave the backups off for days, then you may find out the backup takes a long time because there's a lot for it to update. You want it to update as often as possible, do its natural thing. Then if there's a disaster, you can restore from Time Machine, which is what it's meant for, but you could also use it to get files that you may have accidentally deleted. And it will also come in handy when you get a new Mac, because you can use your Time Machine backup to migrate to a new machine. So there's a lot of reasons to start using Time Machine and get it done right now. It's so important. Every single Mac user should be doing a Time Machine backup.
Excellent. So I think that's a great, overview of setting up Time Machine, and it really is just as easy as Gary describes. It is the lowest friction path on the Mac to getting some backup. And a couple of things that Paul and Gary and I have all talked about that maybe a little more support on. You're going to need an external hard drive. Now that video was actually recorded in 2018 and it still completely applies. I think the one thing that is updated a little bit, as he mentions USB 3. Modern Macs are going to be USB 4, USB 5. And the hard drive size, he talks about, you're going to want one that's a little bigger because you want that versioning. You don't want one that's the same size as what you're backing up. You want one that's 1.5 to 2 times bigger. Now, I tend to upgrade my MacBooks infrequently. So I currently finally have an M4 MacBook that I had upgraded from a 2019 Intel MacBook. And I have an 8 terabyte internal SSD on that because, again, I plan on keeping it for a very long time. And I have a lot of memory because I plan on keeping it for a very long time. And both of those things are not upgradable once you purchase it. So I go big, hang on to it a long time. The processor is rarely a constraint. Even on my 2019 Intel MacBook, it was not a massive constraint. There were a few of the advanced options in Lightroom that were starting to become a little slow. So I buy my hard disks, like I said, with an 8 terabyte internal drive. I bought a 20 terabyte Time Machine disk, and I bought, of course, 2 of them because, from the IT perspective, 2 is one is none, and that allows me to rotate them. And I rotate, periodically. Actually, do it about every 2 weeks. I use a Google Calendar reminder. We'll talk about that again, but you need to have a schedule, and you need to probably want to put a physical. And this was a tip from Joe Kissel, but it's something I've been doing for a while. I physically write on a Post-it the date that I've completed the backup, and stick that to the side of the drive that's going in the storage closet before going on and proceeding with the new drive. So let's go back to the presentation here. And I buy most, stop it. I buy most of my hard drives from B&H Video in New York City. They have an amazing superstore. If you ever get up to New York, it's a block long. It's insane. They have really great customer service and good pricing. I've been buying cameras, computer gear from them for a long time. Been very, very happy. So that kind of covers Time Machine. There are alternatives, but I don't know anyone who can make a great case for not using Time Machine. And we'll get to a couple of things that may improve your Time Machine experience a little bit later. Now, another essential tool is providing that off-site. And you can do that by either rotating disks off-site, and we'll talk about using Time Machine or a volume copier to do that, or cloud backup. And there's multiple choices. The one I'm going to talk about most often is Backblaze, because that's what I'm using. It works on Windows, works on Mac, so it covers all of our computers. They have unlimited storage. They are very transparent about how they've built the back end. They publish some wonderful experiences with hard drive reliability. They track them with great detail, and as a result of having a ridiculous amount of storage and buying thousands and thousands of hard drives that they construct into their proprietary storage units, they've gotten a lot of experience with different manufacturers, and they don't buy just one type of drive. It also evolves over time, and they have a whole strategy for how you bring in the next version of a drive technology, migrate things over. But they share some amazing drive stats, and it just works. When I'm on good internet, I have it set up to back up continuously, and I don't even notice, and I'm always backed up. Now at home, when I'm in Florida right now, my wife and I snowbird down here because it's single-digit degrees in Pennsylvania where we're retired. We live on the side of a mountain. It's absolutely beautiful, and January, February, and March are just brutal. So we're down here. When I'm there, historically, we've had very slow internet. Like I had DSL, and I got an upgrade a few years back to go to 3 meg up and 30 meg down, and that was about twice what it had been before. So it's kind of like 1995 internet. I've tried Starlink. The topography and geography of where I'm at just makes Starlink a non-starter unless I want to put a Starlink dish on an 80 to 100-foot tower. So we live with that, and you learn to just kind of deal with it. One of the things is that you can't have too much on the internet at a time. Like, we can actually stream a movie from Netflix or Amazon, but not two at a time. If the backups are running, everyone's going to know. And, Marianne will say, are the backups running? And I'm like, no. Sometimes I've accidentally kicked them on, because I put them on to run continuously while we were going out of town, and then I didn't change it when I got back. So when we're there, they only run overnight, and you can schedule with the Backblaze to, I rev it run from 10 o'clock in the evening until 6 o'clock, 6 a.m. Now, when you're doing your first backup, it's going to take a while. It may take weeks. If you are on really slow internet, it may take even longer. But here's the thing. It doesn't require any work on your part once you set it up and get it started. So you can say, well, this is going to take 3 weeks to back everything up. Well, in 3 weeks, if you did nothing, you would have no cloud backup, versus if you start it, in 3 weeks, you will have a cloud backup. So it's just one of those things. If you're not backing up offsite, and I do recommend the cloud today, it's an easy answer at a great price to get this kind of service. Get started, and there are some other services. If you want more of an exhaustive catalog and comparison of them, Joe Kissel's Take Control book, Backing Up Your Mac, has more details on that. I'm going to kind of stick to mentioning the ones that I use or personally know people using, and it's Backblaze is kind of the one. And I also echo what Paul said. I would love to see Apple integrate iCloud and Time Machine a little more closely. Now, the other piece that we saw in that sort of three-piece puzzle was volume copying. And there's two disk cloning tools, and I use SuperDuper. SuperDuper, and you're like, well, why do you use it? Is there something wrong with Carbon Copy Cloner? No. Carbon Copy Cloner is a very professional, great tool. I just happened to kind of fall into SuperDuper first. I saw a lot of recommendations for it. And once you have a tool that works, unless there's a problem, you're not likely to go seek a replacement. It is easy to use, it's efficient, it's fast. Carbon Copy Cloner is also easy to use, it's efficient, it's fast. They both make smart backups where they can take a backup disk and update it with your latest changes without recopying the entire thing, so that it's quicker, which only matters if you're waiting around for it. And a lot of times you can just start this in the background, go do something else, then come back to it when it's done. Paul mentioned bootable backups, and without going deep into the technology, it's safe to say that while it used to be a big deal, and both of these pieces of software have put a ton of work into making it possible, it's just barely possible. And Aaron and others have strongly recommended on the mailing list discussions that you just not. Unless, and Joe Kissel recommends that as well. He's like, unless you absolutely can't stand just a tiny delay to set up a Mac, with recovery, install a Mac OS, and then bring your data back, don't even think about this. It is fragile because of the way Apple is doing more and more work to secure Mac OS and your data. But especially to protect Mac OS itself from being, updated malevolently. They've done things like cryptographic signing and making it nigh impossible to just take a copy of the operating system and boot it up without them having sort of blessed it with their internal cryptographic, seals. And that's what made this not work. It has worked. They've done workarounds. It's not worked again. It's an area that's fragile and complicated. And so to any friend, I would simply say, just don't do it. Don't try to make it part of your strategy. If you want to read in detail, there's plenty online. Both of them have written blogs about it. But if you just stick with the basics of, I want to take a copy, generally of a data volume, and I want to keep other copies up to date, easy peasy. And in both of these cases, you're not then having to take that copied volume and sort of run it through any sort of utility to make it back to your usable data again. It's really just a copy, encrypted or not. And a word on encryption. I absolutely encrypt the internal SSD on my MacBook, and it's the default on the current Mac OS, and it's very efficient, it's very reliable and safe. And the biggest risk is that you forget your encryption password and that you somehow are unable to complete any of the other paths that Apple gives you to decrypt that. And there's some pretty good ones. You can use your Apple ID. There's a process you go through. But I also have that master password for my Mac, which is the same password I use for encryption, on a physical piece of paper stored in our go bag, which is in our a fire safe when we're at home, and that we have with us in a kind of a safe place when we travel for months at a time. And it's on a piece of paper that is a set of instructions for how to reboot life without Sam. And as a bit of an aside, when you look at your technology setups, you have to think, if I'm going to build something that's too complicated for someone else to deal with if I'm not around. And a gentleman that I really enjoy his blog and his book, Fritz Gilbert, he wrote a book called Keys to Successful Retirement. I recommend to anyone. But he talks in his blog about writing an annual love letter to his wife. And it's essentially you and your spouse putting down instructions for things that maybe only I know or I've cared about that you now need to deal with if I'm suddenly not around. And so my ultimate backup for this is, how are you going to get into my Mac if I get hit by the proverbial bus? It has the password. It has just as few breadcrumbs to get back into my accounts. And because there might be photos or videos or data that's only on my machine that someone else is going to need access to. So do think a little bit about that next level of contingency. And we had a great discussion about this in one of the afternoon learners things, by the way. And I think it's a good topic, and we could talk for an entire meeting about it. But these are pretty essential tools if you want to use that kind of 3-2-1 methodology we're talking about. Now there's a few other things that are nice to have, but might be useful. One is, and Gary talks about letting Time Machine just back up constantly. And it takes snapshots every hours, days, weeks. Very good about that. And on modern Macs with an SSD and the APFS filing system, the performance penalty when those things happen, it's almost unnoticeable. However, but I was using this way before that, and I did find it a little noticeable. So I found this nice piece of freeware called Time Machine Editor. It's still out there, still works just fine on Tahoe. And it lets me, instead of letting Time Machine do its natural behavior of constantly backing up, it's quite so, rather often, I tell it, I just like one backup a day, please. And that works very nicely for me. It kind of fits with the way I think about backups. I'm less likely to need a backup from something that I've been working on just today or just deleted today from this morning than I am from yesterday or earlier. And at some point, I may get rid of this one, but for right now, I'm still using it, and I still do that. This is a tool that I purchased to solve a particular problem of why was my Time Machine disk filling so quickly. I felt like it was filling a little too fast, and it's okay because it is it takes care of itself. And this is why you want a disk that's larger than the one you're backing up, so you can keep versions of things that are not the current version, and it'll compress old versions out and make room so it can keep doing its job, but don't make it too hard for Time Machine. So get 1.5 to twice as big as what you're backing up. And Backloop has some nice capabilities to, do restorations and understand what it's doing and search your backups. But ultimately, I only used it for that one thing. So this falls into the nice to have, but if I didn't already have it, I wouldn't go buy it, and I wouldn't point anybody to it. So it's one of those things you may hear about, but these things are not use cases you're likely to find yourself needing. Here's a tool that I do use, and I do use it often. And actually, Paul and I both use this for little different use cases. I want to understand what is consuming this space to do cleanup. And then he's specifically mentioned when we were conversing about this that he wants to look for things that maybe he doesn't need to include in backups. Maybe they're static copies of videos. You put your DVD library into your computer. Well, you have one copy of it, and it doesn't change. You don't really need it in your backup, so you can exclude it somehow. But it gives you a nice visual look at how space is being consumed on your Mac. For Windows, there's and this is about $10. For Windows, there's a free tool called JDisk Report that I used to use that does something very similar. So let's go do some demos and what we're going to do is I'm going to show you real quick what the Restore and Backblaze look like. And there's a Restore app that they provide in addition to the website and sort of the Backblaze client that just sits in your bar and does the backups. We're going to take a quick look at Super Duper and what a copy looks like with that, and Daisy Disk. And then we'll come back to close out with a few other things. So let's stop the share. Oops.
Thanks, Sam. This is terrific.
And we're going to pause that.
And folks, a last re-up of the Pi Attend tool for the door prize later in the meeting. I'll put the link in.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is the Backblaze Restore app, and I already launched it and let it connect, signed in, and Backblaze has multi-factor authentication, which I do with a text message. So again, good data security. Your data is encrypted automatically by them. There's some provisions for you to provide keys. I just let them do it. And the idea is that for the same reasons you want to encrypt your data, they want your data encrypted so that if a hard drive was to walk out the door in one of their data centers, they don't have to worry about it. And most states that have reporting requirements, if the data is encrypted appropriately, don't require them to notify you. So best practice not to lose other people's data, but if it's encrypted, it's a lot less concerning. So again, Paul mentioned if you need to recover a whole hard drive, there's a service that you can pay them for to put all your data on a disk, put it in a FedEx envelope and send it to you. And there are some limits on the size, by the way. So you have to pay attention to that. But it's in general, you can get data back by mail or do it online. And most of the time, you're probably going to do this, just as a. See now, it logged me out. Let's see if. All right, so Sam has to go get his password again. Let's see if I can manage to do this because I use a long enough password because I don't have to do this very, very often. Get over there. Okay. And on passwords, I use password managers, both Google and Apple. They are because I tend to use longer passwords and don't remember them.
Sam,
So it's easier to.
Sam, what's the Google method for saving passwords?
Passwords.google.com. It's built into Chrome, built into their products. And of course, here you go, two-factor authentication, which is good. And interestingly enough, I have my iPhone in my hand. I copy code on the iPhone. And one of the things Apple does so well is that this ecosystem just works together. And so I do a copy on my iPhone and it's immediately available on my Mac. So go to my MacBook. And this is why I had this staged ahead of time, but it timed out on me. And again, that's what I would consider to be good practice, because you don't want to leave something that provides access to your data just sitting there ready for anybody to walk up and push the button. And maybe ideally you should have your Mac lock your screen, but it seems like prudent for them to automatically log you out after a few minutes. So that's probably a good thing too. And we'll do a little multitasking while we're waiting for the server connection, because this is a lot of data that's pulling down the information on all the files, the computers that I have backing up. And even with good internet here, it takes a moment. So we'll take another look at a fairly simple app while we're waiting for Backblaze. And this is Daisy Disk. And it shows all the volumes that I have online. And remember, this is an app to understand space utilization. So it also supports some cloud services. But let's take a look at the main hard drive. And this is 8 terabyte encrypted. And it scans it pretty quickly for an 8 terabyte SSD. And once it's scanned it, we'll be able to view the results. And what I like about it is that it's very visual. It allows me to easily drill down and understand what's chewing up space. And if you want to clean up disk space, there's whole articles that have been shared on this recently. There's other tools to visualize space. There's great techniques with your Mac, even things as simple as emptying the trash. But being able to understand what is consuming space is a nice adjacency to backup, because you want to understand, well, do I really need this much space? Like if I got rid of 20% of the space, because it turns out it's just filled with some junk that I downloaded a long time ago, or an offline movie library from my streaming service, I could exclude that. Backups would go a little faster. And like I say, this is pretty fast. SSD access it's a nice world now. So again, very graphical display, and you can kind of drill down. So let's go, Sam. Oh, about pictures, and not surprisingly, my iPhone photos library is 545 gigs now. Photos that I've scanned, this is a Epson scanning directory, and you can quickly see sort of what are you doing here in terms of what is consuming storage. And like in this one, it's all right. So it's really just, there's only a couple of directories that hold meaningful amounts of space. And if you drill into them, you get down to individual files. And probably the only thing I'd like to see in here is some better reports where I could kind of get down to the file level across an entire disk, or from a directory down, and then get a report on it. But it's easy to use, it's fast, it's a little less than $10. Just an easy to use tool that makes my understanding of disk space utilization quick and intuitive. Okay, so we've got our list back from Backblaze, and again, we're restoring here. So let's go into, and this is an external drive with photos on it. So let's say that I needed to restore one of these. And these were some shoots that I did recently. And I can pick a couple of files. Let's say somehow I deleted that, and it turned out that I later realized I deleted the best photo that I took that day, and I want that one back. Okay. So I can put this wherever I want. So we're going to put it, let's put it back over there. And we'll put it in here, but we'll put it up a level. And again, I tell you, we recommend having an up-to-date backup in place and closing all unnecessary apps to optimize the store process. That might be a little overkill. So I don't think we're only restoring 2 files, 53 meg, and completed. Just that easy. So, and this just works seamlessly in the background. So it's one of those products that I recommend in the same breath as Time Machine every time I talk to people about backup. And now let's do something a little spicier. Let's take a look at Super Duper. And Super Duper is a great app. It appealed to me because the author Dave Nanian wrote very technically, and it comes up with a default to my the default script is to back up my photos archive, and I back up from volume named Vault 814 to back 814. But that's not with me. In fact, that disk, and we'll touch on this a little more later, is sitting up in Pennsylvania in my home office. So today, let's back up pVault 1, Portable Vault 1, which is a 4 terabyte SSD that I have here. And where am I going to back it up to? Well, it is one of these nice Samsung 4 terabyte SSDs. Everybody can see that. And I'm going to back it up to another 4 terabyte SSD, and I bought them two at a time. So let's plug that in over here. I have a little USB-C hub besides that. So now I've got both of these volumes online. And note, and if you, I didn't really hold it up quite the right way probably, but both of them are physically labeled on the outside what the volume is, which makes it, when you're dealing with removable volumes, whether they're desktop hard drives or smaller SSDs or sticks, if you got room to label it, I highly recommend it. So we're going to back up pVault 1 to pVault 2. Now, notice as soon as you tell it where I'm coming from and where I'm going to, and the operation, and there's other operations that are available, but this is the one that I use pretty much all the time. Just back up all the files. I'm doing a disk-to-disk backup. And it tells you in nice plain English what I'm going to do. When you hit copy now, I'm going to back up all the files from 1 to 2, doing smart updates. So I'm only going to copy the files that are different. And this is going to be the same result as if I erased the target volume and then copied the whole thing, except it's going to go a lot faster. And this is, you can schedule these things. I usually just do this as manual because I said the driver on some of these processes, if the process requires me to physically plug and unplug drives, I don't need to schedule it because I've got to plug something in, take it in or out of the closet or the drawer in this case. So I'm going to go ahead and say copy now. And he's going to prompt me. I could avoid the use of the password. There's an option I could set up to do that, but I've chosen not to. And again, he tells me a second time what he's going to do. I'm going to copy and erase what's needed to make pVault 2 look identical to pVault 1. Are you sure you want to do this? And notice that it has selected by default, don't copy. The author is doing everything he can to help you from shooting yourself in the foot. So you've had several options here to make a conscious choice and be well informed about what it's doing for you, because it will work on a lot of files in a hurry. So we're going to say copy, and off it goes. And at the end of the copy, I could have it play an alert. I could have it eject the target volume. There's again a lot of options that I have. Oftentimes I think on my normal backup script, I do have it set up to one that I load by default for my raw files drive. I do have it set up to eject the target of the copy after its completion. But it's chunking right along, and you can see it will evaluate all of the files that are on that drive, and it just works along. It'll tell you how long it took. And the gentleman who wrote this, Dave Nanian, actually worked at CompuWare, which was a company that I worked at for the last tranche of my career. And I didn't learn that until after I had, I bought the software before I worked there. But it's an interesting, one of those little fun coincidences. So let's go ahead and go back to the PowerPoint. And hopefully that gave you a good flavor for those three pieces of software. And again, there's only a few things that I think everybody falls into the needful category, but a good cloud backup, a volume copier. If you use external drives, you need to backup. If you only have an internal drive, you might not need that step. Again, this is where you decide how much backup is good for you and how you're going to go about it. Paul mentioned, so let's segue back to some of the things Paul and I have had some interesting shared experiences on. RAID, and Paul mentioned RAID is not backup. So RAID is a technology that will have a group of disks, and the idea is that a single disk failure will not result in you losing your data. In fact, the data will continue to be available, and in good RAID drives, you can even take the bad drive out, put a good drive in, and it'll go ahead and kind of back it all up. And RAID 1 is the simplest, where I just have two drives and they're identically mirrored copies. As you go up in the numbers, you get to having multiple drives and checksums, and they can reconstruct pieces, the missing drive, from bits and pieces and checksums that are on all the other drives. And it's really a great technology, but I'll admit I have had some poor experiences on a personal level. And my first bad experience was Rebyte. And this now is going back into the 90s, I believe. And it was a company that offered me something I naively bought into. Never worry about losing data again, because it's going to be RAID. I knew I wanted RAID, but it was what they were using in big enterprise, and the Linux guys were talking about soft RAID. And I wanted RAID. I was running Windows at the time, and this sounded great. It had some great press, and I mean, look at that. Never worry about losing data again. Who wouldn't want that? So it's a little piece of hardware, and you plug so it's a board. You basically used an old computer or built yourself a server, and you plug the drives into it. Now you had hardware RAID with all these extra capabilities. And I thought this thing was great, and it was great, right up until it wasn't. One of the things that didn't work was any sort of automated notification of drive failures. It was supposed to exist, but it didn't work for whatever reason. So I found out when my network volume just kind of went away and I couldn't get to it anymore. And again, learning from others' mistakes, it had a couple of intermittent disconnects, and I should have immediately realized I need to understand this. This is a worrisome sign. But it died, or it was mostly dead, if you're a fan of The Princess Bride. Mostly Dead is almost alive, and they did have some techies who helped me figure out what had happened. A fan in this server that I had built had stopped running, and so it was baking all the drives. And when the second one failed, because it was RAID 5, that's when I found out. So I was able to open it up, run this blasting little fan against it to keep it cooled down, and we were able to coax one of the two dead drives back online. And now you had the interesting problem of, say, the owner of a 150-gallon aquarium that is leaking. What do I do with all of the data that's in this? Because I didn't have anything that was as big as the combined capacity of the server. So, and I didn't have good point-in-time backups of all the contents of the server. So in that crisis, you see a lot of my practices today that were really written in stone of, you got to have backups. You got to have, something, you got to have room that you can duplicate it, offload it. So it was a learning experience, but I did get out of it alive and without losing any data. So it wasn't my last experience with dead RAID. And in fact, I recently told this story about, which only happened a couple of years ago, about a commercial Lacey RAID enclosure, one of their two big enclosures. And Lacey's a Seagate brand. Some people don't like Seagate. I told this story on an Afternoon Learners thing, which is a great group. And so this was dead RAID. And it wasn't like the rebate where it was revivable. It was more like Monty Python's Dead Parrot. It has shuffled off the mortal coil. It has joined the choir invisible. It is an X-RAID. It is stiff. It is bereft of life. It rests in peace. It is RAID no more. It clicked and clacked, and it was not coming back no matter what I did. And I tried all the things one would reasonably do, could not get it back to life. So I'm going to, rather than sort of retelling this story badly, I'm just going to share the video that Jonathan captured where I tell it the first time. And that will take us then to a part in the presentation where we're going to kind of wrap up. We'll cover a few closing thoughts and where other places that you can get help in making these choices, or if you need help in dealing with some of the problems that we've talked about.
Thanks so much, Sam. Yeah, so let's start with Pi members with any follow-up questions. And while we're waiting, I wanted to welcome to the meeting two older Pi members. It's great to have Burt Reynolds back at our meetings. And Loretta Young is also with us today. So thanks for that.
Awesome. Okay, so this is about a 9-minute video, and we're going to talk about a contemporary experience. So this is not esoteric, old hardware. This is something that just happened to me a couple of years ago when, in fact, I was doing exactly what I'm doing now. I was away from home, and I had my copy. I had a copy of my data with me, and I had one of my two backup disks with me. And since this time, I've actually changed my approach a little bit. And this underscores the idea you need to revisit your backup approach. At that point, I was using Time Machine, and you can coax Time Machine to back up external drives. But today, I would recommend using just a volume copier. I think it's a little simpler and more robust and better suited for me for how I manage data. So let's hear that story, and then we'll kind of wrap things up.
Okay, so I shared the experience in my photo club's Facebook group, and I'll dump that text into the chat after we talk through it. But I'm snowbirding down in Florida, and when we arrived here, and it's not the first time that we've done this, but when we arrived here, what was different was that the external drive that I have now about 3 terabytes of photos on just sat and made unhappy clicking noises when it was powered on.
No.
And it continued to make unhappy clicking sounds even after a prolonged period of some hours. Now this is a RAID drive. It's a 20 terabyte Lacey RAID drive that's set up as RAID 1, so full duplication.
Oh, good.
So there's 2 10 terabyte hard drives in that enclosure, and it presents as 10 terabytes to Mac OS, but in fact, it's actually updating both of them. And what should happen, and I've actually seen before on a different enclosure from Lacey, was that one of the drives may fail, and then it'll tell you, hey, I'm degraded. There's a drive that's failed, but you're still running. You're only running one drive right now. You don't have a live backup, and you can replace that drive. It'll resync them up, and everything's fine. But in this case, that never happened.
Oh.
So, and it's interesting. I was talking with some relatives, and my my nephew, who's a pretty heavy duty engineer, was like, "Well, did you put it in the freezer?" And I was like, "And I've heard that trick with failed hard drives before, but I did not put it in the freezer." Instead, what I did was the next business day, I contacted Lacey Technical Support.
Right.
And I never did find out exactly why this failure occurred. Maybe they'll debug it, because after we went through some basic questions to establish that, I had the device and the serial number, and that it was still in warranty, and my warranty included data recovery.
Mm.
He said, "Well, do you have a copy of the data?" And I answered that I did, and in fact, I had already recovered it to an empty 10 terabyte external drive that I got. And the reason so I did not take up any more of their time and resources trying to get my data back to see if they could have. I think there's a pretty good chance they could have, because it's hard for me to believe that both drives physically failed. I think there was one physical failure and then some combination of firmware, software failures that prevented the enclosure from failing that drive out of service. And we might have even been able, with working with support, to figure out which one was bad and physically take it out and get it to come online. But we didn't try any of that, because I said, "Hey, I've already got my data back, and I already know that I've brought it up in Lightroom and everything's good." Because I back that external drive in addition to my internal SSD on my MacBook Pro up to in Time Machine. And I whatever your backup is, having a daily backup and having some strategy, like I use the 3-2-1 backup strategy, where I've got multiple physical backups and I've got a cloud backup. So there's always backup that is offline, backup that is current, and backup that is off-site. And that really meant that while I was a little nervous when that happened, I didn't panic, because I brought one of my 2 Time Machine discs with me, and I have 2 that I alternate. And so usually about once a month, I write the date on the box. I'll physically swap the Time Machine disk that I'm backing up to and put the other one offline in its original box in a closet. And so even should some sort of ransomware or catastrophic security event happen that compromised my laptop, there's one that's completely offline and unplugged. So as long as I didn't then plug it into the problematic laptop, it's a known good state. And I've got cloud backup through Backblaze, where I could also go back to a point in time. And those having those different tiers of backup and having them be automatic, more or less, to the point of I still do have to, if I want to switch backup drives, I have to physically do some, plugging and unplugging once a month. But that made all the difference between completely freaking out and panicking and being very stressed out, and this just being something that I knew, as long as I kind of proceeded carefully, I would be back to where I was. And that's what I was able to do. So I didn't lose any data, because I had brought those backups current right before shutting everything down and leaving Pennsylvania. But I knew that if I did make a misstep somewhere, the most likely pothole I would get myself in was that I'd have to download everything from the cloud again, or I'd have to do without it until I went back to Pennsylvania in 3 months, or make a quick trip to Pennsylvania to get a backup drive. But it all worked out. And so this is just sort of one of my annual pleas for everybody: of have your backups, have multiple levels, use a strategy like 3-2-1, and I'll put some links and stuff in the chat for that. But it just will save you, and then get your family members to do the same. If you're the computer literate person in your family circle, get them going. And the cloud backup is the easy one, because we just recently set up, my niece and her husband were transitioning from years of just using work computers to do everything to a realization that they needed to have their own personal computers that they owned and kept all their personal business on that, and their work PCs were used only for work. And in doing that, you know, the cloud backup was the easiest because it was just like, you need this, and it was just like, tell me where to put my credit card and set it up.
Right.
And it just will work. And I know that it will work in the background invisibly, and that if something goes horribly wrong, they can get a drive sent to them through the mail for a small fee, or they can download all their data again. And it's not losing data, because losing data is the one thing I'm always concerned about for family members or me, that's the one that you just want to avoid at all costs. Being out of service temporarily is bad. Losing data is, you know, with so much of our lives being digital now, is nightmarish.
Yes.
But there's a few different approaches you can take. There's different utilities. And I have another level I didn't talk a lot about because I didn't have to use it, which was physically cloning periodically that drive outside of a backup program, but just cloning it as a fully usable copy. So using something like Carbon Copy Cloner or Super Duper. And I really never met a backup I didn't like. And I even have, every time I've changed computers, I have a full backup of the computer at that point in time. So, you know, like if I know that somehow I had something on a previous laptop and it's just not on this one in the place I might expect it to be. Maybe it was in some weird app directory. I can go back and get a copy of that old laptop from 2019 or 2015 and see what was in this directory in 2015. And that has been very useful to me over time.
Well, Sam, that's one of the best presentations.
Okay.
Sam?
Yep.
Yeah, this came up in the chat and I was curious about it. Could you talk a little bit about the formatting of the backup disks? I always assumed APFS would be the standard unless you have deadly old Macs, but you mentioned exFAT. To talk about that a little bit if you could.
So I have my external drive that I use to store my photo and video data is APFS, and my Time Machine disk is APFS because that's the format that Time Machine wants to use, and I just kind of assumed it knows what it's doing. When APFS first came on the scene, there was this idea that it's only good for SSDs, and they have continued to improve, you know, this and that. There are still some people who could rationally argue if you have an external drive, you might be better off formatting it as extFAT or HFS, you know, one of the older formats. And for smaller drives, I often do that, like USB sticks, little 2 terabyte drives or whatever. But yeah, I use it for both the drives that are spinning and attached to my Mac right now all the time. And it has been good enough for me and does bring more functionality. And I think that's where Apple is going to continue to invest. But I would just say, hey, you know, you can read the articles online. You could listen to Gary Rosenwig's opinion. You could read Joe Kissel's opinion, and you can make your own decision. It does work for me, and I do use APFS pretty widely. So
it's interesting because exFAT, I understand, for memory sticks is best for cross-platform to be able to plug them into different things, but not
exactly
not so much for larger backup disks, I wouldn't think.
Yeah, and I don't use it for larger backup disks. Those, for me, those are going to be either whatever the target and the copy are going to be the same, or APFS for my Time Machine disk, APFS for my, like I said, my large external drive. And that works. It works just fine for me. I do understand some people have different opinions. I'm not going to tell you that they're wrong, but it continues to evolve. And I suspect at some point, Apple will simply come out and say, everything all the time should be APFS and just trust us on this. But I think they're going to continue to support those old formats for a very, very long time.
Sure,
go ahead, Jonathan.
just a moment, I just wanted to let everyone know that Joe Swick is the winner of our door prize today. And congratulations, Joe. I hope, is Joe still here? I think so.
Yep, I'm here. I'm listening.
And so, Roy, can you help remind, because I'm feeling kind of fuddy-duddy, what we're offering door prize winners these days?
Yes, currently the Apple Pie is offering AirTag or a $25 gift certificate from Apple, or a $25 Amazon card, or Amazon credit.
Oh, actually, wasn't it there was another thing.
Oh,
To roll your Pi membership forward.
oh yes, that's right. We could increase we can roll over your Apple Pie membership for another year.
So, Joe, among all those different offerings, what would you like as the door prize from today's meeting?
Oh, I think another AirTag package would be pretty good.
AirTag, okay. I will send that off to you in the mail.
Okay, you can send it to my, I have a Falls Church address, but I have a Sarasota address. I've been in both places.
Yeah, you could send that to me privately or whatever, or
I think it's probably in the file. It should be accurate.
okay, I'll look for the Sarasota, otherwise I'll email you.
Yeah, that'll be fine. That's great.
Okay.
And
Congratulations.
it's been a lot of years. I remember going to the medical center to the original meetings back in the late 80s and 90s and whatever, and it's been a great group to follow. All you
Great.
guys are all good. Doing what you
Okay.
do too.
Thanks, Joe. Back to you, Sam.
All right, nice prize. I am a big fan of AirTags, and a bigger fan since they let you share them, between you, so that my wife and I can both see the location on the same AirTag.
Okay.
Yeah, the shared AirTags is a great thing when you do something like put an AirTag in your car, or any circumstance that you want to have your spouse or a friend or to share it. It's a very useful function.
All right. So I told that story that I just played for you at the Afternoon Learners, and I just want to encourage anyone who hasn't attended to join us. It's announced on the Pi mailing list with the calendar announcements. Second Thursday, usual, it's virtual on Zoom, and it's a good group. And we usually do sometimes a technical topic, and then sometimes just things from the floor. But it's another good place to hang out with Pi members who enjoy helping each other. And it is sometimes you get an interesting story.
And
There are other.
the only other
Go
thing
ahead,
I'd
Tom.
add to that point, Sam, is that we actually have Pi members who can't come on Saturdays, but love to come to the second Thursday meeting.
Yeah, and that's a good segue to, if you can't come to Thursdays, there's these nice events that kind of supplement the general meetings and the mailing lists, where people get together on a regular basis. So the first and third Saturdays, we have a couple hours, and again, just often there's a featured topic. Sometimes you need something to get people talking, but a lot of times people bring problems or questions, and then that stimulates other people to share experiences and recommendations. And it's usually a good group, and it's some nice community with your fellow Pi members. And if you can't join on Thursdays or Saturdays, there's always the mailing list. And you can throw questions about backup or virtually any Apple topic out to the mailing list. There's almost 200 folks on the list. And when we pull together, we are smarter together. So don't be shy to ask for help. There are a lot smarter people than me on that list. You have Ken Goldman, Larry Kirschberg, Jonathan Van Zek, Dave Goldberg, Aaron Davis, Roger, so many people who are experienced with Apple computers and the different iDevices, and generously share their experience. So if this is, especially this backup topic, you don't need to call or write Sam. You can just put a question out there, and I'll see it there. Other people will see it. For instance, if you have a time machine question, I'll almost guarantee you that Aaron Davis is going to give you a more expert answer than Sam. But you get to participate in these communities and help each other. And that really is, I think, what makes us a good user group. So just some other places you can go for help. And now we'll kind of sort of start to wrap things up a little bit, and most of these things we'll have touched on. We talked about sync and replication as not being backup, but I want to bring that home again. If you are using Dropbox or iCloud or OneDrive or anything, that's copying the files. That means if it's a bad file, it's copying a bad file. It's usually replicating deletions. It's great for collaboration. It's helpful to have backups. Some of these services have versioning and history. Sometimes you have to pay more for that. Some of them don't. But none of that is going to, the answer to, well, I don't need a backup because it's in Dropbox, or I don't need a backup because it's in whatever, is a horrible answer. So you just kind of keep an eye out for that. And these are some of those services. Dropbox in particular, and there's a couple of these that I have a little bit of a bone to chew with. And Ken, I'll come back to you. Dropbox will offer in its most current incarnation to back up your documents, and it will use the word backup. And this is true on Windows or Mac. Dropbox is a liar. And I am really ticked at the product managers at Dropbox that allowed this to get out the door, because it's essentially trying to trick you into putting more data in Dropbox. And when it says backup, to me and most people in the world, backup is a copy where the original data is untouched, unchanged. When Dropbox says backup, what they mean is, would you like to move your key folders, your documents, your pictures into Dropbox? And then we'll put a shortcut pointing over to Dropbox, just because now your documents folder will be empty. Your real documents folder on the computer you bought, on the hard drive you own, and all that data will go into Dropbox. And you may or may not have anticipated having that much data in there. You may not have enough storage. You may not have fast internet. It's a horrible, horrible thing to do to users. And they do have options for more version history. They've got a thing called Family now, where you kind of get an automatic shared folder. It's not a bad product in most respects, but that computer backup feature, the way that they push that language at people, just beware, buyer beware. And probably even worse than Dropbox is OneDrive. Microsoft has created something, and there's a series of videos from a gentleman named Leo Totenboom, and he publishes on some different types of blogs and material, but he publishes these Ask Leo technical videos, and they're really good. And he has a great perspective, and he admitted that it's not unreasonable to compare OneDrive to malware or ransomware. It is sometimes user hostile in trying to take over your data and put it in OneDrive when that is not what you wanted. And we went through this with setting up a new computer for my wife, and we had all of her data isolated on a separate external hard drive. And despite two people who both worked in and around computers for many decades, we won't say how many, we still managed to somehow find ourselves on this new Lenovo laptop with all of her data uploading to OneDrive over our very slow 1995 era DSL connection at our mountain home in Pennsylvania. And people have lost data from this because it sort of aggressively tries to get you to put things in there. You check the wrong box, agree to the wrong question. Suddenly it's moving all of your data into a documents folder that lives in OneDrive. And people have canceled this and then tried to go back and gotten rid of what thought they were just getting rid of OneDrive, which they didn't want. And it turns out things had been moved and they deleted unintentionally the only copy of data that they had. Some people who've been in that hole didn't have a backup or didn't have it on a separate drive to start with. So very, very careful on Mac or Windows with OneDrive. The product managers have made some magnificently evil choices here to really almost try to trick you into putting all of your eggs in the OneDrive basket. And I have people who love OneDrive. They keep all their data there. They're very happy with it. Because of that behavior, I'm very leery of it and try to stay away from it. Try to keep it as neutered as possible on our Windows machines that live in the house. And it's hard because Microsoft really wants to resuscitate it. Box is still around. We're not going to talk about it today. It's primarily an enterprise thing. And iCloud is like a whole general meeting presentation for all the things you can do with it. It does just work. The pricing is pretty clear and pretty generous in terms of space. It does not replace the need for comprehensive backup. Aaron has explained how he uses iCloud Drive for his key documents folders and how that facilitates moving to a new Mac. Again, a whole presentation by itself, but in general, iCloud just works. I've kind of moved all of the things that I had as personal data that used to live in Dropbox over to iCloud, and I still have Dropbox because I collaborate with people through a shared folder, and that's what they're using. So you have to go where the people you're working with are. But remember, all of these things can be useful. They are not backup. And Ken, let me just pause there. I saw you had a hand raised, and did you have a question right on sort of on that topic?
On backup in general,
Okay.
which topic are you referring to?
Well, I just saw your hand raised.
Yeah, you asked if I had a question on that
Oh,
topic.
sorry. Go,
I'm not sure
yeah,
which
go
topic
ahead.
you're talking about.
Yep.
My question is on iPhone backup. Can you talk about that? I mean, I have a specific question.
So
I am
I'll talk
showing
about
that I am backing up my iPhone, but I would have no idea how to restore anything from it. And maybe that's off topic for this presentation.
so I'll give you the short answer, and then it's probably worthy of a good discussion in one of those other forums that I mentioned. My understanding, and I'm not an expert in this, is that your backup from your iPad or iPhone to iCloud using only sort of the Apple default tools can only be used to restore the whole thing to a iPhone that you're going to wipe out and replace with that restoration. So it's not the kind of thing where, well, I just want to get this one photo. That's not the way that kind of backup works. You have enough storage, it puts a blob up there, it tells you how many gigabytes it's taking. There are forensic tools and other third-party tools that lets you take one of those backups and actually spelunk inside it. But that's kind of out of scope for what we're talking about this morning.
Yeah.
General rule is yes, all of your iPads, iPhones should just back up to iCloud, make sure you have enough storage. And once you've migrated to a new one, which usually you can either populate doing a direct device-to-device migration or from an iCloud backup. They give you those both options, and at different models, some of you probably recall sometimes the device-to-device option was a new thing, and then sometimes it didn't work, and sometimes you had to pull it back from a backup. For the recent iterations of iPhone and iPad, either has worked really well, but that's the parachute for my phone fell in the lake. And unless you want to get into other third-party tools, you can't get inside it to get individual things. But that would be a great topic for a clubhouse or another meeting.
Related to that, so I'm not quite done on this. I recall from previous versions, maybe it's still there hidden somewhere on my iPhone. I would back up from iPhone to my Mac. And is that still a thing or don't?
It is still a thing. You can still plug your phone into your Mac, and I believe there's even a wireless option for sync and for backup, and you can take a backup onto your Mac, and you can encrypt that. You can encrypt that backup. So yes, that is still an option, and I do think Jonathan is probably making notes right now. Need to do a clubhouse about iPhone and iPad backup and what the tools for working with backups apart from full restoration, because there's definitely some tools out there.
So, but even backing up to the Mac, you still can't do individual file restores. It's like the whole thing. Is that
correct? It's
okay?
Yeah, that is iPad. As far as Apple is concerned, an iPad or iPhone backup is not divided in ways that you as a user can get to the little individual compartments.
Okay,
in fact, there are little individual compartments, and third parties make tools to let you go in and extract things out of a backup, which could be useful. even outside of like a forensics kind of thing. You want to go back and you have a backup of your, deceased relative's iPhone or something, and you want to just pull the photos out or whatever. Yeah. So there's usefulness there with third-party tools. But as far as Apple's concerned, they do not provide that that I'm aware of. And again, this is kind of outside of my expertise.
Very good. Thank
So
you.
let's, as we come in for a landing, let's just talk about a few other things that can be helpful. They're not the main thing, but they can be very helpful. And this is, you need to think about storage versus publishing. So there's places that you publish content or that you put it for storage, but it's not really the biggest backup destination. It's not like on the main line of your parts of backup. I use SmugMug for photos because they have a very modestly priced plan, the $20 a month billed annually, and you have unlimited storage for photos. So when I shoot sporting events or family events, I'll often publish a gallery of photos on SmugMug, sometimes on Facebook too. But they'll be out there essentially forever, and $20 a month. Amazon Photos is unlimited storage for photos at full resolution included with Prime. So if you're paying for Prime, you've got this other backup destination you can use, and their app will let you back up the photos from your phone or other places to there. YouTube is where, excuse me, I publish like our family videos and historic videos with some of my volunteer jobs. I volunteer as the public information officer for the Florida wing of the Commemorative Air Force, and we publish historic videos from events. And finally, sound. I use SoundCloud to share sound recordings with family. And you could use YouTube, you could use other things, but when I was originally looking for something that fit the bill, SoundCloud was the one. All of these generally allow you to both upload and download if you're the one controlling the account. So other places you can stash a copy of data, excuse me, for sharing and publishing, but then also as a sort of backup of last resort. Just something to think about. And Windows. We all know somebody who has Windows. I finally put Windows behind me when I moved on from the corporate world, but we still have a Windows laptop in the house. So same principles that we've just talked through for last couple hours. You want backup software, cloud backup are kind of the two essential pieces. We're not going to get into the volume copying on Windows, but Backblaze and Carbonite. I use Backblaze. That's what we use in our home, both on Windows and Macs. We use Macrium to back up my wife's laptop. Acronis is also well recommended. Just be aware, you can't forget about Windows. Got to take care of that. And when I say off-site, what do I mean off-site? Friend's house, safe deposit box, your office, and people suggest this one, so I thought it was worth mentioning. Things have changed, and especially in government or corporations now, there are restrictions you maybe have never bumped into, but taking a storage device into the office or removing it from the office may be problematic and not allowed by corporate policy, even if nobody is searching your bag at the door every day. In the event that you suddenly were asked to leave, you may find that on that day, your box of plants and photos and stuff from your desk is not allowed to have a hard drive in it, and someone will check. So I would encourage, the office is probably, unless it's your own business, probably not where you want to put your offsite copy anymore. And if you're an aviation guy, you could put it at your hangar or your clubhouse locker, wherever. And in all cases, if this backup has PII, personal data, valuable data, it should be encrypted. And Apple's encryption is very good. It is probably safe enough to keep you safe from anyone except nation states, the three-letter agencies, and maybe even from them. So encrypt your backups, especially if you are going to store them outside of your control. But in general, just as both Paul and I have said, just encrypt your backups. So what did I do? Well, I've hinted at it for the last hour. I have 2 Time Machine external drives. They're both identical 20 terabyte drives. I rotate them every 2 weeks. I use a Google Calendar recurring task that I mark completed. When I travel for an extended period of time, a month or 3, I just bring one of them with me and I forego having that rotation. One of them stays safely tucked at home in the home office. I have an external drive of raw photos and videos that I do my creative work with, and I clone that drive again every 2 weeks. Now, in a perfect world, this is where Sam is not doing things sort of perfectly. In a perfect world, I'd have another online drive that I schedule to clone that drive every day, but I don't do it because I tend to update it in large chunks when I go out and do a shoot. And so I can always make that copy after I've come back from 3 days at an air show and just bring it up to date. But it would be better if I had 2 clone drives so that, again, I could have one off-site and offline and never be updating the one and only backup. I use cloud Backblaze for both the internal Mac SSD and the attached drive, and I get a lot of value from that, which lets me give myself a little slack on some of the constant backup of that external drive. And I use the simple Google Calendar reminder and Post-its to take care of shuffling the disks about. And that simple system keeps me in good stead. I also have a pile of old hard drives in my closet, all labeled where they came from. And for instance, if I send some slides out to be scanned in bulk, I have the original CDs or DVDs that they sent back to me. And I have a whole catalog of old media, some of which is slowly becoming dead. We were just talking about that yesterday, Paul and I, that I have a FireWire external drive. Well, when my 2018 Mac Mini goes away, there isn't going to be any place I can plug that in, no way, no how, that would support it, because the support from Apple and the ports have just been going away. So it's probably time to let that one go. If I haven't needed it by now, I'm probably not going to need it. And I have a magnetic bulk eraser that I keep out in the garage that, as an alternative to a shotgun, is a pretty good way to really, really, really blank a disk. You don't want to wear a watch when you're using it, by the way. So as we come to the close, if I was sort of to bubble up, what do you do when really bad things happen? This simple advice here will save you. And my wife, I mentioned Marianne, also worked in IT, and I asked her to review my presentation. I value her opinion. And she got this slide and she said, this is it. So if you have a disk that fails, internal, external, doesn't matter. You have one of those other bad things happen. Slow down. As Douglas Adams said, don't panic. Time is an illusion, unless you're trying to get in a quick lunch. But don't panic. Just stay calm. Slow way down. You do not want to make things worse. You had a disk failure. If you've had any sort of backup process, you've probably got a good path to recovery. What you don't want to do is do something in a hurry that now closes the recovery option, or worse, winds up accidentally corrupting or erasing the second copy that you had that was good of that data. So maybe even consider getting a second opinion. Label things. Be very thoughtful. If you have this is not the time to rush. It's just, you want to be very meticulous in your recovery from a problem. And if you've done reasonable preparation, your recovery will go well. And if you ever saw the movie Apollo 13, Gene Kranz really did say that pretty much on the recordings of the loop. Let's work the problem, people. Let's not make things worse by guessing. So take your time. Ask for help if you need it. There are lots of people who will help you, either for free within the club or the community, or for money. All of those things are options. And when you say, well, why don't we just try? Pinch that thought off with something that one of the guys who used to work for me said, and he was a former IBM CE, or mainframe repair technician. And he would always remind me, Don't challenge worse. Let's just try this. Well, what if that actually makes the problem worse? What if that gets us from having one copy of the data that we don't have access to right now to having 0 copies of the data? Just be thoughtful, be fully present in what you're doing. When you've had a problem, this is not the time to multitask. It's not the time to rush. And I go back to a Rudyard Kipling program poem that I love called If. And you've almost certainly heard this one. If you can keep your head when all about you are losing theirs and blaming it on you, if you can trust yourself when all men doubt you, but make allowance for their doubting too, if you can wait and not be tired by waiting or being lied about, don't deal in lies, or being hated, don't give way to hating. And it goes on. It's a wonderful poem. And it's just about composure in the moment. And that is the singular skill that you can bring to recovery, is how you approach it, not necessarily the technical aspects. So what do you do next? Well, here's sort of my challenger questions for you. Figure out, what are you backing up today? And how are you backing up? How many copies do you have? Is it enough to survive the failure of your laptop? I had an SSD failure in my Intel 2019 MacBook. And I made an appointment, took it up to the Apple store in Pittsburgh, and they took it in the back, ran some diagnostics, and they're like, great, we absolutely agree. You are under your Apple Care warranty. We will fully repair this, but we're going to have to replace the motherboard. Do you have a copy of your data? Because we're not going to be able to get the data off because of the way that they construct and secure and encrypt the contents of the SSD. And fortunately, I did. So I got a brand, they gave me a completely working but empty MacBook. I took it home and restored my data. And where is your offsite copy? If there's something really bad that happens, the first thing you're worried about is your people. Are you safe? Are your family safe? Are all your loved ones? But you're hoping that if your house burned down and you're standing on the street with your arms around your family and your phone in your pocket, you got a way to get back to your Mac data in a couple of days. It will become more important. It's not immediately important, but it will become more important. So in the words of that great sage Taylor Swift, are you ready for it? My recommendations today, which I've repeated so many times you could probably give them: Time Machine plus Backblaze. It just works. It's very simple. If you're doing nothing today, you could be doing both of those in a couple of days. You could start Backblaze today, download it, plug your credit card in, and get it started. Automate what you can, but keep it simple. Don't get too fancy. Don't get hung up on everything being automated. Remember, a core part of my backup strategy is Post-its and Google Calendar reminders. And failures will happen. They're not if, but when. Even if they haven't happened to you yet. I had a good friend who worked at the Washington System Center, and we talked when we spoke about those mainframe computers that I used to work with, Harv Emery, and he was the lead globally for the hardware team. And so he kind of saw everything around the world. And he said, anyone who's had a failure thinks they're much more frequent than they are. Anyone who hasn't had a failure thinks they never happen, and they're both wrong. But be prepared, in the same vein that you have fire extinguishers and smoke and CO2 alarms, and have some backups and test them. And you will have better days when bad things happen. So that's all that I have to share today. Hopefully some of this has been useful. I think there's definitely adjacent topics that we could delve into with some real experts, someone who does this for a living, or someone who works for Apple. We could delve into some of, especially some of the little niches, like, we could spend a whole clubhouse talking about cloud backup. But hopefully it's helpful, and hopefully if you do not have sort of enough belt and suspenders wrapped around your Mac, enough parachutes strapped onto it, you're motivated to go do that. Thank you very much for your time. And it's a little afternoon, but I'm happy to take questions.
Dan, thank you so much. This was an excellent, and ended with life advice. Let's go first to Cheryl and then Gabe. Go ahead, Cheryl. Go ahead.
Thank you. My question sort of segues into your talk, and not asking you or anybody in particular, but I just wanted to say that for some reason in my contacts, I lost one of my contacts that I had lots of information in that file. I had all kinds of telephone numbers and emails and et cetera, for Hyatt. And it disappeared. So I looked, I realized it was gone when I was in my iPhone. So I went on the iPad to see if it was there. No. I went back on the computer. No.